and welcome back. So in today's episode we are finally going to tackle our dining room. I am quite embarrassed to say that we have been living here for a few months now and the dining room is not even remotely functional. I mean, most of our rooms are not finished, which I think is quite normal. It's a process that's probably going to take a few years, but I'm not talking finished, I'm talking functional. It's a dining room and we don't even have a table in here. Without further ado, I guess I'm going to start by just showing you the state of it, the before. So walking in, you realize that it's actually quite a dark room. That's because it faces west and does not get that much light until late in the afternoon. There's currently not much in here except for the coffee machine, which is going to stay here. To my left there's a completely blank wall. The idea is to put a dining room buffet here, which will hold all our plates and other china. Then there's the door that leads to our kitchen, coffee area. Then to the right there is a window which leads to our patio. I don't know if you can see that blue color out there. That's for sure something I'll tackle in a future video. It is quite the eyesore to me, to be honest. Currently not much light coming in from this window. However, in the late afternoon we do get some really lovely light, which is super nice. This area is where we want to put our dining room table. We actually do have one already. However, it is currently downstairs. We thrifted it and when we got it, it was covered in white paint. We are currently in the process of stripping the paint off and restoring the solid wood table that is underneath. To be quite honest, it proves to be quite a troublesome project. Nonetheless, we will have to finish it before we finish this dining room. The chairs are thrifted as well. I actually like them quite a lot. I do think eventually we want to change the fabric. Currently there's this red-orange fabric with the tulips. I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. As you can see, we have quite a collection of stuff here. All of it are things we collected for the dining room. A lot of it is actually thrifted, some of it was bought new over the years. I'm not 100% sure yet if everything is going to stay in here. The painting I'm not sure about yet, and the rug. The rug might get exchanged as well. But we'll see about that later on, I guess. And that's already it. So this dining room makeover is going to be a 3-part series, and you are currently watching episode 1. In this episode we're going to tackle our dining room buffet, which will be standing here somewhere behind me. Initially we actually planned on putting the coffee machine on the dining room buffet. However, the choice of living in an old house is that you sometimes have a complete wall that just has not a single power outlet, which is the case for this one. I mean, in general this room has 2 power outlets, which is a tad problematic, but I think we can make it work. The coffee machine, by the way, or the coffee nook, is going to be episode 2. Finally, the 3rd episode is going to be paint, decorating, putting the dining room table in here, and I guess all the really fun stuff. Let's get started. Now, like most DIY renovation projects, this one came to life somewhere between pinning a trillion inspiration pictures on Pinterest and watching one too many DIY videos on YouTube. Initially, I was simply looking for ideas. But somehow, this eventually led to me thinking I could just build a dining room buffet by myself. I mean, how hard can it be? I guess in this video we are going to find out. Since I had never before tackled a project of this scale, I did decide to not build everything from scratch. Instead, I opted to use IKEA cabinets as a base and go from there. I used SketchUp to plan out the whole cabinet, and then it was time to go buy the supplies I would need to start building. I started by assembling the IKEA base cabinets, which looking back was definitely the easiest part, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. you saw me, I was building these base frame cabinets upstairs in our dining room. However, since I realized that the next part of this project is probably going to be quite a bit more messy, I decided to move everything downstairs into our garage, which is where we're now, and which is probably where we will stay until the more messy part of this project is done. First, I decided to build the underframe for my dining room buffet, which is going to carry and hold the 3 IKEA cabinets together. Before getting started, I had to do quite a bit of measuring and remeasuring to make sure everything would end up working the way I planned. Eventually, it was time to start cutting the wood pieces to length, and then I was ready to screw everything together. So I finished building the base frame. Up close you can definitely see that it's not the most glorious thing that has ever been built, but it's finished. Next I'm going to attach it to the base of my cabinets. So, ever since filming the last clip that you saw, actually a few days have passed for me. Enough time to do some research and realize a few things. One of them is the realization of just how bad this underframe actually is. I think on camera it looks very much fine, but in reality it is really crooked. Part of why the underframe is so bad is because the wood I bought is not straight, and the way I fastened the screws is not ideal either. However, since the frame is on the underside of the cabinet and no one is actually ever going to see it, I decided to leave it like this. Moving forward, I will make sure to learn from my mistakes, and hopefully the rest of this cabinet is not going to be as crooked, because if that's the case, I'm not sure if I can put it into our dining room, honestly. Next up, we're going to build the face frame. I actually already measured and pre-cut all the pieces that I need for this, and I did make sure that all the wood I used is way straighter. Also, I bought a pocket hole jig. Every other video I saw on YouTube about woodworking was from America, and pocket holes seem to be a very common practice there. I think in Europe it's not that widespread. However, for me as a complete beginner, I think this is the easiest way to get decent results. So we're gonna go with the pocket hole jig moving forward. So onto the face frame now, I guess. Before getting started on the face frame, I first attached the base cabinets to each other to ensure an even spacing between them. Then I drilled some pocket holes and started assembling. Now, before I continue with the cabinet, I just got back from the hardware store to pick up some more things, and I saw that they had paint samples, and I just simply couldn't resist. I want to paint the dining room a darker color, however I do not know yet exactly which one, and so when I saw that they had paint samples, I just thought it might be a good idea to pick them up. So I think I'm just going to test them and stay at them for a few days to see if I like them or not. And while I'm at it, I think I'm also going to test some stains. So let's do that. It's actually been a few days since I put the paint samples on the wall. As you can see, I did buy one more paint sample, the darkest one you can see on the wall. When I put up the samples, I did know right away that the two brighter ones were not the color I was going for. So the one logical thing to do was to go out and buy an even darker color to see whether I would like to go really dark. Now for the last few days I did stare at the color samples during various times of day and under various light conditions. I think my boyfriend and I, we settled on the second darkest color, so not the darkest one. The thing is, we do like the darkest color, however on days where there's not much sun and in the evenings that color does feel very dark and we are scared it might feel a bit oppressive, so I think we settled on the second darkest one. I do feel like it's a great choice, but I guess we'll see once we paint the room. Now in terms of stains, I currently like this one best. I'm not 100% sure yet, and I guess I do have some more time left to decide. So let's get back to building the cabinet. By the way, I got myself this black overall. I bought it secondhand for €5, which is an absolute steal, and I'm going to be wearing it now every time I'm doing something messy like sanding or paint. So I guess every time you see me wearing it, you'll know exactly what we're about to do. Now that most of the rough outside structure is done, I'm next going to build and install the drawers. In truth, I'm not going to build them from scratch. That's the one perk of using pre-built IKEA cabinets. So I'm just going to start to assemble them and then we can install them. Now my drawer fronts are cut to size, however as you can see they do not fit perfectly. The thing is, the piece of wood I used is 10 centimeters wide. Ideally it would have been 10.5 centimeters. However, unfortunately I could not find one in that exact size. I do know that I should have cut the drawer front pieces perfectly to size. However, since I do not have a table saw at the moment, I tried to make do with what I have, and this was the easiest way and the best I could come up with at the moment. Now we have to get a bit crafty to make up for the gap. Since I wanted to use trim on the drawer fronts anyway, I am going to use the trim to minimize the gap, but also to hide some of the imperfections that are on my pieces of wood. So I guess let's get to work. First, I started by sanding my drawer fronts, which is never fun, but unfortunately very necessary if you want a decent result. Then I measured and cut my trim pieces to size. Now that we have all our individual pieces, let's start assembling the drawer fronts, shall we? So I had some more time to think about my choice in wood stain, and I think I still like this one best, so I'm going to test it on the cabinet itself next. I'm going to do so on the back though, in case I change my mind, which I don't think I will, but you never know. Spoiler alert, I did not change my mind, so let's stain the drawers. My drawer fronts are stained and finished, however I'm not going to install them just yet. I think I'm first going to stain the cabinet as well and then attach everything later on. I think it's going to be easier that way, so that's what we're going to do now. Before I could get started on the stain, I first went through one more round of sanding and cleaned the whole cabinet in order to remove the remaining dust from the cabinet fronts. And then it was finally time to apply the stain. So the stain is now dried and finished, and I actually am quite happy with how it turned out. I'm going to be honest with you though, I did end up sanding and restaining the cabinet front a few times. I think at least 4 times before I was happy with the result. I think in the process of it I definitely got the hang of how to properly stain, but it was a learning curve, let's just say that. For the doors I wanted to try something a bit more fancy than what I did for the drawers, so here it goes. First we cut the wood pieces for our door frame to size, and then we use the router to cut an indentation where the door panel will eventually sit. I sanded everything, and then it was time to assemble the door frame. One more round of sanding, and finally onto the stain. After putting on 2 coats of stain and letting them dry, it was time to glue the door panels inside their respective frames. And we are finally done with the doors. So the first wax I tried gave my cabinet a really yellow tinge, which I definitely did not want. I'm quite glad that I decided to try first on the underside of the cabinet, because that way at least my fronts are not affected. So after trying the first wax, I went down a deep dive in Reddit forums and YouTube videos, and I ended up finding one wax that is said to not tinge the wood yellow, so I went out and got that one. I tried it on here, and it's true, this one is way better. So I'm going to use that one moving forward, and so now all that's left to do is to start applying it to the cabinet front and all of my doors and drawers. I'm so excited. It is finally time to move the cabinet back upstairs. Now you may be thinking, but Florence, the cabinet is far from being done. And you are right. However, the cabinet is already quite heavy as is, so I decided it would be best to move everything upstairs and assemble the cabinet in the dining room itself. So that's what we are going to do now. wood from the hardware store in a color that I liked. I decided to get it cut to size at the hardware store as well, so the only thing I have to do is to attach it to my cabinet, which I think is the first thing we are going to do. And then afterwards we are gonna install the drawers and finally the cabinet doors. So next up we have the doors. I don't know if you realized, but I only ever showed you these two doors. The reason is I only built the other two doors 2 days ago. To give you a sense of the timeline, I installed the doors 4 days ago and then I started building these two doors afterwards. Why? Well, the hardware store was out of the specific pieces of wood I needed for the frame of the doors, and so I had to wait. I think in the end it took 3 weeks for them to get the pieces of wood back in stock. I even thought about finishing up the video without the middle two doors, but luckily at the beginning of this week we got a call that the pieces of wood were back in stock, and so I was able to finish the doors. Now, because I showed you exactly how I built the other two doors, I decided to just build these two off camera. To be honest, I'm quite ready to finish this project, so without further ado, I'm going to install the doors and then afterwards we'll do the doorknobs and the handles. Let's go! So, now that the doors are in, the only thing left to do is to put in the door handles and the doorknobs. I got these off Amazon. I can link them down below if you're interested. I think they are really beautiful. I'm just not quite sure yet where I want to put handles and where I want to put doorknobs. The only thing I'm sure of is that I want to put a handle here and doorknobs on these two doors. So I think I'm gonna start with that. And just like that, we are done. I know I'm making it sound like this was a really easy project, when in reality it took me, I think, well over 6 weeks to complete. There were a lot of ups and downs. To be quite honest with you, most of the downs did not make it into the video, because I think if I had included all the downs, this video would have been well over an hour. I think most of the clips that made it into the video were the ones where I had already figured out what to do. But just know, if you are thinking about attempting your very first project as well, there will be a lot of downs, and it is completely normal. Don't get discouraged. You'll just have to watch more videos about the topic and read some more about the topic, and then eventually you'll figure it out and everything will be fine. I actually am really proud of how everything turned out. I really like the look of the cabinet and how everything came together. Now, before I finish this video, I do want to circle back to the question I asked myself at the beginning. How hard can it be to build a dining room buffet all by myself? Well, the answer is, it is hard, but I managed to get it done, and I'm really happy about that. Also, I did learn quite a lot along the way, so every future project I'm going to attempt is going to be way easier now. Fingers crossed. Now, if you want to see me decorate the cabinet and also organize everything, you will have to wait a little longer until episode 3 of this dining room makeover. And until then, I hope you're having a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope to see you on my next video. Bye!